Okay, so this story is brought to you by Miller High Life, which is the beer that Curran bought. He is digging through the. There he is. Curran bought this Miller High Life. This story is brought to you by Miller High Life. Alana, she doesn't care about Miller High Life. Curran, he bought it for us. Look at what he's drinking. He's drinking a huge mug of it. Okay. So I'm going to tell you about Tamerlane, also known as Timer. You see, in my other videos, I said that the Mongol stuff happened in 1450. That was false. I was drunk. It was more like 1250 to 1350. So, sorry about that. By 1450, the Mongol Empire has dissolved because they had this problem with succession where every time a leader would die, they would just divide the property between the sons. They wouldn't give it to the oldest son. They would just divide it between the sons. So then, like, slowly they disintegrated into a bunch of different countries. And then there was this guy named Timer, and apparently when he was a child, he was shot with an arrow in the leg, and it made him lame. So they called him Timer the Lame. And Europeans call him Tamerlane because that sounds like Timer the Lame, or I don't know. Something like that happened. So he was like trying to get leadership of this warrior tribe of like nomads. And they said, oh, whoever can reach the pole first in a race will be the leader of our tribe. And Timer was very smart, and he takes his hat and he throws it, and it lands directly on the post. Even though he's lame, he can't run. One of his legs doesn't work, right? So they were like, "Well, you're so smart. We're going to give you the leadership of the tribe." And then slowly he's in Uzbekistan, and he slowly starts unifying all of the Istan countries that would later become Soviet bloc countries, taking them over militarily, making marriage deals with them. And then he claims to be a descendant of Genghis Khan. He is not, but he marries into Genghis Khan's family. He marries a woman named Saray Mulk Khanim, I think is her name. She's actually the granddaughter of Genghis Khan. This would have been about 1450. I was wrong in those last videos when I said it was 1450. It was 1350 when I meant. So anyway, he's like, get this great idea that he's going to remake the Mongolian Empire. And he does a pretty good fucking job. He, like, he conquers most of Central Asia. My screen just went dead again. He conquers most of Central Asia. And every time he conquers a city, he kills everybody except the artists, artisans, and architects. And then those people he takes home with him to his capital in Samarkand in Uzbekistan, and is like, I'm going to give you all the supplies you want. Sorry I killed your family. Now you're going to just make stuff for me. So, like, there was a flourishing of the arts in this period. And then his tomb, when he finally did die, unfortunately, because he was a great man, and I would totally do him, even if he does have one bum leg, I would probably bone Tamerlane any minute. He got the biggest piece of jade in the world, the biggest piece of worked jade in the world to be his sarcophagus. And on it says, when I rise, the world will tremble. That's what he wrote on his tomb. So get this. Fast forward like several hundred years. It's during World War II. The Soviets have taken over Uzbekistan. They decide they're going to exhume, Soviet archaeologists decide they're going to exhume Tamerlane's tomb. They take his body out, and supposedly the same day, the siege of St. Petersburg, also called Stalingrad, also called Leningrad, because they kept changing the name of this city, the siege of St. Petersburg started the same day that they took his body out of his coffin. And that was a horrible siege. Like, people starved to death. It was freezing. They didn't have heat. The Hermitage was, like, all fucked, and all the stucco got fucked up in the Hermitage from the ice collecting on it, and all the curators were, like, we're like, oh God, we gotta preserve the museum, blah, 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 blah. And supposedly, the minute they put his body back in his tomb, the siege ended. So, who knows if that story is true? But I like that story because I like Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is like a pretty awesome country. They're pretty liberal for being Muslim. Like, they let women walk around in miniskirts and shit. Like, you know, they're no Pakistan or Afghanistan. They're like still under the Russian influence where they're like, oh yeah, women can walk around in whatever they want. And I'm like, go Uzbekistan. Yes. Tamerlane is awesome. The other cool thing about Tamerlane is how much he loved his wife. And he had several wives, but he had one head wife who was the actual granddaughter of Genghis Khan. And her tomb, which is called the Bibi Kanem, is bigger than his own tomb. Like, he made her tomb bigger than his. That's how much he loved her. And he went away to go conquer stuff while her tomb was being built. She was still alive while her tomb was being built. And he comes back. The story goes like this. The architect fell so in love with the queen that he demanded that he would not finish the tomb until she gave him a kiss. And she was like, hell no, I'm not giving you a kiss. I'm married to the most powerful man in the world. Because Tamerlane was the richest man in the world right then because he ran the Silk Road. The Silk Road went right through Uzbekistan. This is before they had the sea routes around, Africa and India and everything. So, like, everything was going through Uzbekistan and, like, his conquests. So, literally one of the richest people in the world, if not the richest person in the world. And she's like, hell no, I'm not going to kiss you. Are you crazy? And he's like, I'm not finishing your tomb until you kiss me. She's like, alright, how about if you kiss me on the cheek? And he's like, fine, that's all I'll take. I'll take a kiss on the cheek. So he kisses her on the cheek, and apparently, according to legend, and this is obviously not true, it was so hot that it left a trace mark on her cheek. So that when Tamerlane came back, he was like, hey, what happened to your cheek? And she's like, well, this guy insisted on kissing me. He had him executed. That's how the story goes. I don't know if that's true. Who cares? It's history. Nothing's true. So, anyway, he had his own tomb built, which is called the Gur-i-Amur, and that's where the largest piece of jade is. And the architect of that was some kind of fucking genius, because this is a earthquake-prone region, and every building falls down. All the time. But the Gur-i-Amur has stayed standing. The Gur-i-Amur has stayed standing since like 1450. No matter how many earthquakes they have, because their architect was a fucking genius. And it's a smaller building than the Bibi Kanem, which is her tomb, Saray Mulk Muhammad, or Saray Mulk Kanem. And her tomb falls down all the time, and they're always doing work on it. His tomb never needs any work on it. It's fine. Because the architect was such a fucking genius. And then he died of a cold or something, or a fever or something on his way to conquer China, which is super unfortunate because, obviously what an awesome guy he was. He was so in love with his wife. He cared about the arts. Sure, he murdered 5% of the world's population. But, I love him. Alana was just like, I would probably do him. So, anyway, end of transmission.